Hi everyone. Hope you are fine. Here we are. With one new episode related to should we buy the GTX 1080 Ti? Buying the most expensive graphics card you can afford has long been a reviewer's trope, but it's almost always true. The 1080 Ti stretches this advice to its very limits with its super high price, but with no competition from AMD at this end of the market, Nvidia has reached new performance territory. When buying a 1080 Ti, don't think about the Titan X for what it offers, it's rather overpriced at this point, but think more about the GTX 1080. With the 1080's big price drop to £500, it's become the new de facto choice for 4K gaming at high settings. However, with 3GB more memory and at least 20% better performance, it's hard not to recommend the 1080 Ti for those building the best system they possibly can for 4K and multi-screen gaming. If you're thinking about a direct upgrade from the 980 Ti, the performance increase is substantial. The 1080 Ti is up to twice as fast. If you have a 1080, your card has a lot of life left in it and it's probably wise to stick with it for now. If you don't have a 4K monitor and don't plan on buying one, the 1080 Ti is overkill, and even if you have a 1080 Ti but don't always find yourself playing the very latest AAA games, you can save a couple of £100 on a 1080 or more on a 1070. Verdict: a new performance benchmark, but you pay for it. GTX 1080 Ti overclocking, heat and power consumption. The GTX 1080 Ti is a much more powerful beast than the GTX 1080, and considerably more so than the 980 Ti. Its TDP, thermal design power, is rated at 250W, the same as the 980 Ti and Titan X, while the GTX 1080 clocks in at just 180W. This could be all the difference for those with builds that have 500W power supplies. Indeed, peak power draw for the entire trusted reviews test system without overclocks was 412W, compared to the GTX 1080's 340W in the same test. If you have a more powerful processor than the one we used, take a look at your power consumption readings to check you won't overstretch your PC's power supply. Running the Unigine Heaven benchmark on a loop in 4K, the GTX 1080 Ti was able to boost well beyond its stated 1600 MHz clock speed, happily sitting at around 1800 MHz at around 840C. Overclocking is as easy as ever, with the GTX 1080 Ti receptive to around 1950 MHz. I was quickly able to get a stable looping Unigine benchmark at 1950 MHz without the GPU throttling back. Temperatures maxed out at around 860C on the automatic fan profile. I'd probably tweak it so it runs a little louder and cooler. Popping the fan speeds up to 70% reduced the temperature to a more comfortable 770C. It will be interesting to see whether third-party card manufacturers can encourage the 1080 Ti beyond 2 GHz and what sort of cooling will be required in order to achieve such performance. Memory overclocking was nice and easy. The 11GB of 11GHz GDDR5X memory was happy to receive a boost up to 11.8 GHz without instability kicking in. Nvidia says it has improved the fan design to run slightly quieter, but I didn't hear a difference and neither could my decibel meter. At 28,000 RPM, both fans put out between 55 and 56 dBA of noise, which is perfectly acceptable. In a compact, poorly insulated case with overclocks applied, it will likely become louder, but not significantly. What is the Nvidia GeForce GTX 1080 Ti? The 1080 Ti represents the pinnacle of Nvidia's 2016/17 graphics card lineup, pitching itself as a 4K and beyond graphics card. It sits at the top of the range, £200 more expensive than the recently price-dropped GTX 1080 and £300 below the similarly specified Titan X, which is all but irrelevant now for gamers. This is the third 80 Ti card Nvidia has introduced, following the 780 Ti and 980 Ti. The Ti brand normally means a £100 premium over the regular 80 card, but with performance that looks forward to the next generation of games and monitors, and that's exactly what the 1080 Ti is. This monstrous card is what Nvidia hopes will carry early adopters into the era of next-gen VR, high refresh rate 4K gaming and even 5K. It's the most expensive Ti product ever, but for those who can stump up the cash, it's a card that really looks to the future. GTX 1080 Ti specs and technology. The seventh consumer card to launch using Nvidia's Pascal technology, you'd expect the 1080 Ti to be the most refined yet. From the spec sheet, things look very good indeed. Despite what the name might suggest, this isn't simply an enhanced GTX 1080, this is a completely different card with a different chip on board. Indeed, it shares its DNA and its GP102 GPU with the £1,000 Titan X 2016. This means you get a full whack of 12 billion transistors and 3,854 CUDA cores. Other, more technical specifications vary slightly, but for all intents and purposes, this is almost identical to the Titan X with a few improvements. The factory default boost clock is higher at 1.6 GHz, overclockable to 2 GHz and beyond, and you get 11 GB of GDDR5X running at a 10% higher clock speed of 11 GHz, 11 Gbps. This is both more and faster memory than the GTX 1080, which makes do with 8 GB of 10 Gbps memory. Note that the latter has had its price cut substantially since the launch of the Ti. You'll notice that the Ti has 1 GB less memory than the Titan X, a shortcoming that's made up for by the increased data speeds. This leads to an effective data rate of 484 GB/sec, which is a smidgen faster than the Titan X's 480 GB/section. At the rear of the 1080 Ti there are 3 DisplayPort 1.4 ports alongside an HDMI 2.0 port. You also get a DisplayPort to DVI adapter in the box, handy if you have a monitor that only accepts this standard. Externally, the design is identical to the Titan X, with die-cast aluminium and sharp edges, a green light-up GeForce GTX logo and black accents in a dual-slot configuration. It's rather attractive, if entirely predictable. Personally, I'd hold out for third-party interpretations from the likes of EVGA, ASUS, and MSI. The Founders Edition cards are always slightly cheaper than third-party rivals, but offer slightly lower performance.